Hello, David here with Technics, and today I'm going to be going over PyrOptix image processing software version 1.0, specifically the Smelt Bed Indexing version of the software. This version of the software contains timed and manual video recording, timed and manual snapshots, 5 custom color lookup tables, automatic disk management, full screen mode, time-lapse overlay and camera label overlay, 5 customizable overlays, adjustable aspect ratio for full screen mode, brightness, contrast, and gamma adjustments, frame averaging, histogram equalization, remote iris and focus controls with the optional hardware, Technics watermark overlay, automated time-lapse reporting options, tracks the percent of the bed found inside the image, chart display for bed index value, custom chart length, zone data is output to a CSV file, and we have a user-defined mask for image processing. Before jumping into the software, I wanted to take a second to mention that the bed detection algorithm used in this version of the software is still in beta. So while the rest of the program, like the image capture and data collection, should work as intended, some of the data from the bed determination may not be entirely accurate. Stay tuned for future updates as we continue to improve and perfect this version of the software. Moving on to our software, on the left-hand side here you'll see we have the live image, which is colorized and contains a couple of overlays. We have a timestamp overlay and the Technics watermark on there right now. Next to that we have our selected frame, which is a grayscale image that contains a bed detection overlay. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Next to that we have our detected frame, which is where we actually get our bed index number from that you see to the right here. So the detected frame, all of the white pixels are determined to be the bed and the black is not. And that number next to it, this percentage, is how much of this is filled with white pixels. So 48% of this image currently is filled with white. Below that we have our bed index chart, which shows the bed index information over time. Up here we have our full screen button, which goes in and out of full screen mode. You can see here on the bottom left that bed index value stays in the full screen mode. To exit full screen mode, you can hit the escape key or click anywhere inside of the image. Below that we have our settings button, which when clicked will open up the settings window, and we'll discuss this more later on. Next to that we have our capture image button, which takes a snapshot of the live image. We have the auto capture image button, which takes a time snapshot of the live image. We have the record video button, which takes recorded video of the live image. Record segments, which takes timed intervals of recorded video. Then we have our about button, which when clicked brings up some version information, contact information, as well as the current program state. You can also access the user manual from this window in a PDF form. Below that we have our exit button, which will exit out of the program. Next, let's take a look at some of the settings we have available. So under basic settings, we have available network cameras. And you can see here we have a list of all the cameras that are available on our network. The program will scan the network every few seconds and populate this list with any new cameras that are online. Above that we have the active channel control, and this controls which camera we're currently looking at. So right now we're looking at channel 0. Next to that we have our image capture settings. And in there we have record interval, which defines the interval that is used for record segments. We have clip duration, which defines the duration for the clip used both for record and record segments. So the way this is currently configured, if we were to hit record video, we would begin recording the live image and it would continue to record in 1-minute clips because our clip duration is set to 1 minute. If we were to hit record segments, we would record a 1-minute clip every 10 minutes. Next to that we have our snapshot rate, which defines the interval used for time snapshots. Below that we have our video codec, which defines the codec used for video recording. And below that we have our data storage file path, which defines the path location used to store all the data generated by the software. The content saved to this file path will be managed by the hard drive management tools built into the software, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. Below that we have our open video folder, which when clicked brings up the location where all the videos are being saved, and the same goes for the open snapshot folder right next to it. Above that we have our image manipulation settings, and if we want we can move this window out of the way so we can get a better look at the live image while we modify these. So right now everything is disabled and grayed out because the image manipulation control is disabled, so we'll go ahead and enable that. And you can see here on the left we have the option to modify the brightness, the contrast, the gamma. And we also have the option to change the image correction, which tries to equalize out the histogram. And you can see here you can find a combination that may or may not improve image quality. And if you're just not sure and you want to change it back to defaults, you can always hit the reset to defaults button or just completely disable the image manipulation. We also have the option to turn on frame averaging, which you can see now, a nice smooth image. If we disable that, you can see there's a lot more noise and motion in the image. Moving over to the live image settings. Some of these are disabled and grayed out, and that's because they're simply not included with this version of the software. So we have record with overlays, which is enabled. And what this will do when it's enabled, anytime you record video or save any images, the overlays that are on the live image currently will be saved with those. So right now we have a timestamp and the EnterTechnics watermark. If we were to record some video or take a snapshot, those would be saved onto the video. Below that we have display EnterTechnics watermark, which either shows or hides the EnterTechnics watermark you see here on the left-hand side of the image. Below that we have display camera label overlay, and much the same. It either shows or hides the custom camera label overlay in the top left of the image. And that string is defined by the camera label here at the bottom, and that can be modified by the user. Below that we have our display timestamp overlay, and just like the other ones, this can be shown or hidden. Below that we have stretch image on full screen, and what this will do when enabled is in full screen mode it'll stretch the image out to 16:9 as opposed to the native 4:3 that the camera is actually in. So let's go ahead and take a look at that and see how it looks. You can see here it stretches the image out across the whole monitor. Below that we have the option to display custom overlays. Custom overlays are defined by this Draw Custom Overlays button, and I'll go ahead and do a quick example here. So the user can define up to 5 different shapes that can be applied to the live image, and I'll go ahead here and you can select the color. I'll try this blue, and I'll just try and draw a little bit of an outline of the bed here. And once we have something we like, we can hit overlay set, and that'll be applied when this is enabled to the live image. Next, we'll be going over some of the more interesting features found inside the software, that is the time-lapse settings. Before we go into what each of these options are inside the settings page, I want to quickly go over just what exactly these time-lapse reports are. The software offers the option to automatically stitch together images to create a typical time-lapse video. On top of that, we also offer the option to combine those images with the data that's generated, giving us a unique look at the entire day's events in the matter of a few minutes. We'll take a look at an example of that here in a few minutes, but first let's go over what each of these options do. Under basic options, we have daily time-lapse enabled, which enables the program to automatically generate the desired time-lapse videos each morning at 12:05 a.m. for the previous day's data. We have hide grid, which hides the grid on the time-lapse report. Create snapshot time-lapse, which creates a time-lapse consisting of the raw snapshots. Create selected frames time-lapse, which creates a time-lapse consisting of the selected frames. Create detected frames time-lapse, which creates a time-lapse consisting of the detected frames. And finally, we have create time-lapse report, which creates a time-lapse video report that shows the detected and selected frames as well as the zone data with the tracking timeline. And we'll see an example of that here in a second. Under advanced options, we have frame rate, which is the playback rate of the videos. Percent of images to include, which is the percent of images captured the previous day that will be used in the video. Reducing this effectively increases the speed of the time-lapse. Running average, which is the number of data points to be included in the running average that is applied to the data charts. Open time-lapse folder, which will take you to the location all the videos are being stored. Let's go ahead and take a look at an example of the complete report. The data itself isn't too interesting because this is on a test machine where we're just playing a looped video over and over again, as you can see. So that gives you a picture of what these time lapses are and how they work. Under manual settings, we have a couple of grayed out indicators, and these are just not implemented yet in the software, so at a future date they will be used, but for now they're not available. Below that we have run time-lapse generator, which manually runs the time-lapse features, so typically they'll run at 12:05 a.m. if they're set up to be automatic, and if they're not and you want to do it manually, this is the button you would use to do that. Below that we have our disk management, and so in here we have threshold and reduce to. And so the way this is set up right now, we have 85% under threshold and 30% reduced to. So how this would work is once our hard drive, and the hard drive being defined as the hard drive where the data storage is going to, which is defined under basic settings. So once that reaches 85%, the program will trigger an event which will go through all of the data that's stored in that location and delete the oldest part of the data until we get down to that 30%. Typically, we would set it somewhere at 85% as a threshold and maybe something more like 60 or 50% to the reduced to. Under the Output Settings tab, we have the option to enable or disable our digital outputs. And this requires optional hardware as well for our remote iris and focus controls. You have the option to enter in the digital output module IP address, which needs to match the module. We also have the steps per signal, which is the amount of movement that the iris and focus do each time the event is triggered. We have the digital output module connection status, which displays whether or not you are correctly connected to that module out in the field. And right now I'm not connected to one, so we see a red indicator here. If I was, it would be green. And then we have the actual iris and focus controllers. So you can see adjust the iris to the left or the right and the focus to the left or the right. Next, we'll discuss the bed index settings. And so for the algorithm options, I'm going to just kind of gloss over these, as you really shouldn't modify them unless you have a firm understanding of how the algorithm works. But if you do want more information on that, you can consult the manual. Some of the settings we will discuss are found under basic options. So you have the option to capture frames, which will capture the selected and detected frame, which is part of the time-lapsing stuff. Below that, we have a couple of settings that are used for the algorithm still, frame averaging and apply mask. Below that, we have display bed detect overlay, which when enabled will display the detected bed overlay onto the live image and the selected frame. Below that, we have display full screen indicator, which will display the bed index information when in full screen mode. If that's disabled, it will hide it. We have averaging, which applies a running average to the data chart on the front panel. And then we have the chart width, which defines the x-axis or the time scale on the chart. And below that, we have the option to set the mask on the image. All right, that pretty much wraps up our discussion here. If you have any other questions or comments or looking for more information, feel free to contact us at support@entertechnics.com or check out our website at www.entertechnics.com. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.